I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Joyce Raimondo, and I am the Education Coordinator at the Pollock Krasner House and Study Center in East Hampton. And I am Zooming in today from my home in East Hampton, which is down the street. And I'm wearing two hats today, one as the host of the program representing the museum, and two as an artist happily participating in this exhibition with the Carter Burden Gallery. And we're going to talk today about a special current exhibition called Scribbles. And this was juried by Lois Benda and Amy Cheng. And Lois will be presenting some of the themes in the show. And then some of the artists will come on and share their work very briefly. And then we'll get a little walkthrough tour at the end. So before we start, I'm just going to very briefly touch upon some of the ideas in modern art and Pollock and Krasner's work as it pertains to the theme of scribbles. So I'm going to do a very brief screen share, and I hope this makes you want to learn more. Okay? We do hope you, if you're in New York City, that you get to see the show in person. And Lois can put more information in the chat later. So right before this talk, I said, well, what actually is the definition of a scribble? And we all know when we were toddlers, you know, some of us would scribble, babies scribble. It's an instinct, right? And basically, it's a work that's done carelessly, quickly, and randomly with uncontrolled lines. Now, when I show you some of these artworks today, it could be very deceiving to think that Pollock was scribbling, for example, when he made his drip paintings. That is not the case. However, Pollock and Krasner, who worked in this barn, which is now a national landmark, they were inspired by the idea of automatic drawing, which I'll explain more as we go along. So here's Pollock doing his iconic drip painting. I'm sure most of the artists on the call are familiar with Pollock's drip painting technique, placing the painting on the floor and working from all four sides, dripping paint from sticks. So this might seem careless, it might seem random. It was actually the opposite. Pollock was letting the paint literally flow, but he said, I can control the paint. He was a master at drip painting, making very intricate patterns, shapes, lines, textures, and so on. But some of his inspiration, as I said, derived from artists who came before him. This is Lee. Lee is, like Pollock, is also an action painter. And they share in common the idea that they don't have a plan before they start working. The image flows organically, you might say, intuitively from the artist working in the moment. They're not working from a sketch. Lee says you just take a deep breath and hope for the best and get into it. And sometimes, as I say, it comes through miraculously. And here's another example of Lee's work. She says, don't will it, don't force it, let it come through on its own terms. So let's see some of their inspirations. Pollock and Krasner were both strongly influenced by the Surrealists. The Surrealists practiced this idea of automatic drawing. And there's many different types of automatic drawing. There's 100% automatic drawing, where you close your eyes, for example, and you don't even know what's coming out at all. And then some automatic drawing can be partially automatic, where you're letting the image flow, but you also have some deliberation over what's going on. And then some artists will do an automatic drawing and then sometimes pull images out of that spontaneous drawing. So what's the purpose of this? Well, one aspect of this is, how do we bypass the logical, rational mind, right? How do we tap into the unconscious? How do we even tap into an element of play beyond our rules and regulations that society teaches us? So the Surrealists devised many methods to bypass the rational mind, automatic drawing being one of them. Here's one by Andre Masson. He says, all my life I've learned for a thing I cannot name. It's not nameable. It's not coming from a rational place. Pablo Picasso also did automatic drawing. This one he made for one of his lovers. Picasso says, I don't know in advance what I am going to put on the canvas. While I work, I take no stock of what I am painting on the canvas. It's only later that I begin to evaluate more exactly the result of my work. Pollock also says, when I am in my painting, I'm not aware of what I'm doing. It's only after a sort of get acquainted period that I see what I have been about. So these statements might lead one to believe that these artists aren't working with skill. That's not what I'm trying to say here. The automatic drawing is really very, very free flow. The painting, there's a high level of skill, composition, and so on. But there's a key idea in modern art that it's unplanned to some degree. And that statement came from this exhibition, which we had in the house several years ago, by Pepe Carmel and Helen Harrison, the director. Now, Pollock and Krasner sought psychiatric help at different points in their lives, and they would bring their drawings into the psychiatrist to be analyzed. So it was a way in Jungian psychology of tapping into your dreams, your subconscious, your inner life, which can be believed to be actually more truthful than your rational mind. And we've all had this, we call it a Freudian slip, right? Where something comes out and you didn't mean to say it. So here's one of Lee's psychoanalytic drawings. This is by Pollock. Now there's a subtle distinction here. Pollock did not make these while he was in the office. He would sort of, you might call it doodle or do these free flow drawings and then bring them into the office with the psychiatrist to discuss. And Pollock, in these free flow drawings, you'll see a lot of influences by artists, other artists and other cultures. So for example, in this one, you might see a mimicking of signs and symbols of indigenous people's art. In this one, we see kind of a mimicking of Orozco, the Mexican muralist. So in that sense, Pollock is sort of, he's taking all of these influences, all this culture that he's seen, and it's coming out in these free flow drawings. Pollock was very influenced by Scribbles, who he took a workshop with. Scribbles taught his students to be informed by the accidental in art, how to drip, how to pour, how to scrape, how to use unconventional techniques. And Scribbles emphasized the accidental. As I said, Pollock worked with a very strong intention. And here you see Pollock's work over the years becoming increasingly fluid, more gestural, losing the image, more painterly. And eventually this gives way to drip painting. So I hope this gives a little introduction into our theme, and you can look at this theme, which Lois is going to elaborate on it's like a kaleidoscope. There's different facets to it. It's not a simplistic theme by any means. And this is one that I made that's in the exhibition. It's 9 by 12. It's a watercolor resist. And it's not 100% automatic, but I start with a word, in this case, love. And then I just let the image flow out. And you might even say in a childlike way, but at the same time, you can see there are aspects of composition here. It's not completely random. So for example, the little worm-like, yellow worm-like figure, that curvy shape is repeated with the shape below it, that yellow line. That's not something a 2-year-old would do, right? So this is an example where it kind of hinges between free flow automatic, but also being deliberate and composed. And then I take the image in some cases and I project it onto a larger canvas and I use that as a starting point. So that's a little bit about me. And I am so looking forward to hearing Lois's take on this, because it's extraordinary how she came up with this idea, and also Amy Cheng. So I'm going to exit. I really am so grateful to Lois Benda and Amy Cheng for curating and being jurors of this exhibition. And Lois wears many hats, and Lois will take us on this journey now. So thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. That was terrific. Great insight into Jackson Pollock and Lee Krasner. So I want to welcome everyone. Let me just pick this up a little. Okay, I'll share the screen. Welcome. It's been a journey, and I wanted to thank Joyce for this opportunity to talk about Scribbles with her and the Jackson Pollock House. I conceived of this concept for a show about 2 years ago, and it was kind of an unconscious love of scribbles and a thought, and it kind of started like a scribble, because my own work doesn't have in its end manifestation generally a feeling of scribble, but scribble is always in my mind and my genesis of ideas. The scribble is universal, and it's beloved by artists. Let me admit, I'm sorry, did you admit, Amy? Okay, great. The scribble is universal, and it's beloved by artists as fun, exuberant, and full of freedom. And I think we love it because it doesn't have constraints, but it is often mindless doodling that's overlooked and underrated and seen as a minor player and subordinate to, as a handmaiden to the finished artwork. But I know that visual thinking starts in a scribble, and it's as important as the finished artwork. In fact, that kernel or key to the whole artwork could be in the act of scribbling. And concurrently, without my knowing it, there is a major show that just finished in April in Rome and Paris about the scribble. And the curators, Diane Bidart and Francesca Alberti, put together a show historically of scribbles throughout art history from Leonardo forward. And so I would just want to tell all the artists that you're in good company, seeing that there's a simultaneous show happening at the same time now. I was absolutely flabbergasted that this was a big idea out in the art history universe. So its groundbreaking research gives us context to our own subconscious ideas at the importance of scribbling. So I'd like to start the show with our next slide. And I want to tell you the line that everyone knows, many of you do. A line is a dot that went for a walk, by Paul Klee. It comes from a website I've listed here. I can list all the websites at the end. The site mentions that Paul Klee knows the dynamic nature of a line as a means to conduct the human eye across the space. They make an analogy of pictorial form with natural processes in nature and botany. It's the logic of organic growth and progression, as we all know that a scribble line goes into its own dynamic world. Some linear works by Klee evoke imaginary cities, gardens, or landscapes and float between abstract configuration with urban skylines, the streets, or territorial elements reduced to patterns or serial geometries. And look at these beautiful line drawings by Klee. The artist that follows in his footsteps, in my mind, is the master Saul Steinberg. Many of you may know him, we grew up with him. In this conversation about scribbles, we cannot ignore him. He made it very contemporary and popular. Everybody knows the New Yorker cover of New York City with about an inch for the rest of the world. In here, in this large artwork, he has 10 pairs of dots, A through B, A and B, and he has a straight line. But look at all the meanderings of the lines that he drew between A and B throughout this page. I fell in love with him. We also have to acknowledge, of course, Jackson Pollock and the world of abstract expressionism that Joyce has talked about, and Cy Twombly, of course, in the 20th century. And I make note here of the show that's been in Paris and Rome last year. And here is Saul Steinberg's cover from 1965, and I fell in love with this cover. It's kind of symphonic, and it's like an opera, this large scribble. And all the inventions that he had, it seemed so automatic. His mind was unbelievable. with the sense of personality and the caricatures he did of people, of New Yorkers. So he's a love. And here's more Steinberg. What's so incredible is he really got the idea he was giving. Of course, as an illustration, he has the first speaker up at the upper left, boxed in his chatter. And he has a more Baroque kind of concept of the other speakers. He did fashion. And on the lower right, I don't know if you can tell, I snuck in an Al Hirschfeld, who did scribbles for the theater set for New York's Broadway. And he had a different look and feel, but it's as generous in his lines and meanderings and scribbles and the secret Nina that he hid in them. And Amy, I'm going to turn it over to you, Amy, for the gesture and the scribble. Amy, are you here?
I'm sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
Okay, so sorry, this is Amy Cheng. I'm a co-curator with Lois of the show. When I thought about what a scribble is essentially, I thought that it's a gesture. And these are examples of gesture drawings of the figure. And when you do a gesture drawing, you are not thinking, you are just reacting. Your eye connects to your hand and you move your body. And therefore, you know, more elaborate scribbles are just more gesture drawings. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great, Amy. And the last example of our impressions, of course, this is Amy and my ideas of scribbling and the thoughts around the show, but the main stars of the show are the artists, and we're going to see them right after this slide. So the other scribbler in 3D that really captured my imagination is Frank Gehry. I don't know if that comes to mind for you, but in the 1990s in New York at the Guggenheim, they had a show of his work. I mean, that's 30 years ago. And when they put these crumpled pieces of paper next to the actual architectural drawing shapes models, I just fell apart. It was just so incredible to see that a flat piece of paper becomes this crumpled shape of structure that is built into amazing buildings. As you can see the examples here, the Vuitton building, there was a new building I hadn't even known about, which is the Biomuseo in Panama City. And so this was the great genesis in my mind of how scribbles evolved for me. And I'm going to turn it over to our artists. And I'm going to introduce Maria Morabito, our first artist, who does a scribble and sculpture. Some of her other entries were down at the bottom because it was so unique to see the variety. So thank you. As we go along, can everyone kind of get ready to speak after I, oh, let me go back. There's someone, okay, someone waiting again. Maria, please go ahead. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, thank you. First, I would like to thank Amy and Lois for, of course, curating the show and choosing my sculpture. And as an introduction to myself, I would say that I am a sculptor and a painter, and my art is my way to make sense of the world. And I use abstraction to combine perception and imagination to explore themes of connectivity as related to nature, to cultural landscapes and cultural identity. My artworks are the result usually of a continuous dialogue occurring throughout my process. My sculptures explore the interaction of volume and lines in space, organic and geometric forms, as well as the visual potentials of materials. This sculpture in particular articulates my interest in the expressive potentials of the line in space and the importance of scribbles to combine an intended direction with the freedom of exploration. I started playing with the wire, thinking about circularity, something organic, a flowing form that was enclosed but not repetitive. Because I often like to combine opposites, I decided that the profile of the line would be a square to complement the roundness of the line. And the resulting sculpture is what you see, is both guided and spontaneous. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. I have to be under a minute, so Thank you.
Maria, thank you so much. And we're going to have questions at the end.
Yeah, of
We
course.
appreciate all of the artists. It's called the elevator speech. You have 1 minute. So,
Yeah.
so
I hope I made it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Joyce has been in the lineup, like we have her speaking ahead of the in her introduction. So thank you, Joyce. It's a joy. I feel this is childhood personified, intuition on paper. Beautiful. All right. Susan Swinand, please speak. Thank you. You're muted, Susan.
Well, I wanted to thank you for doing the show because I was really happy that it fit perfectly into the work that I did in this series. And a point I wanted to make is that creation is not making something that you already know or something that you've made before. And I like very much all the ideas that you presented about Pollock and but I think it's a good place to be in a state of not knowing when you begin a work of art. And when I begin, I'm totally in line with what Paul Clay said, and just taking a line for a walk. I don't know what I'm going to draw or paint. I may have an idea that prompts me to begin, but usually that idea after a short period of time moves on into something else. I think all form is created by energy acting on matter. And so the idea is you have to do something. You have to put yourself into your materials. And I just start by making marks or dividing space in an interesting way. And once I've put down a few marks or a few shapes, I have something to respond to. And then I make choices, analyzing what the drawing needs. Like I've done a lot of things spontaneously, but now I'm analyzing and I let the painting tell me what to do next. And usually the best things come into a work of art unannounced, in my opinion, as little moments of grace or little surprises. And you always know when something is revealed. And the forms are revealed in the process of wandering and working. I often think of drawing as a painting as a puzzle to be solved. And every puzzle is new, and that's what keeps the whole experience fresh and wonderful. And like Pollock, little by little, you find out what's going on in your head too. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. That was terrific. And yes, scribbling is searching and you are seeking here.
Exactly.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Andra. Hi, welcome, Andra. Unmute.
Oh, hi, Lois. Thank you so much, Lois and Amy. So I'm a multimedia artist, and I think at the very heart of all the ways I work, including installation, drawing, painting, and sculpture, is scribbling. I am definitely a scribbler. The work I'm showing that you see on the screen here in this exhibition, Scribbles, is part of a very large body of work I created using ballpoint pen. The series began when one day I was looking at a tiny doodle I had made while on the phone, and it was so immediate and intuitive and so connected to my unconscious, so awkward and unexpected. I thought, hey, that's what I want to do in my artwork. And so I began to magnify my doodles into very large-scale drawings with imagery that references the macrocosmic, microcosmic universe, which is a recurring theme in my work. The forms in these drawings are arrived at improvisationally and show the traces of their evolution. This series of drawings celebrates the immediacy of the handmade line as an antidote to the current trend of conceptual computer-generated art.
Thank you. This was definitely mesmerizing, as many of the work is that's been submitted. Thank you, Andra. Okay, I'd like to introduce Gail Friedman. Thank you, Gail. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, I think we're good to go. Thank you to Lois and Amy as well for including me in the show. I'm super excited with it, and I'm down in DC and made it up to visit and think it's just fantastic. I like to work with what others no longer want or find useful. And in the case of this series of work, these lines are made with bandsaw blades. I love to follow these blades because they have so much tension in them. And part of what I'm trying to do is find balance through the tension. So in many cases, I will pinch these blades between two pieces of wood. And in this case, I cut slits into a wooden bowl and just play and see what can the blade do? Where does the line take me? And in the case of this particular piece, well, most of these pieces, the shadows become an extra gift that I get from them. So this work is really about kind of managing anxiety and using the tension that is inherent in these bandsaw blades in order to manage anxiety and find joy in a dangerous world. So thank you.
Thank you. It was extremely inventive. We loved the variety of materials that were submitted to the show, and yours was extremely inventive. Thank you so much, Gail.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Kathleen Thumb. And
Hi. I'm here from South Carolina, and this drawing, Deflated, is actually from a series of drawings that are inspired by combining man-made infrastructure systems with internal biological systems of the human body. And the tubing forms are meant to reference networks of petroleum pipelines, as well as body systems like intestines and vessels. And this drawing and the series, I actually begin with a gesture of scribbles to feel out the composition, to kind of capture the energy, and to leave some of those beginning marks actually present as I begin to refine the forms as I keep evolving the drawing. So part of what I set out for myself too in these drawings is to have a continuous line, which can actually become kind of obsessive and confusing and begins to immerse me in these infrastructures. And I also have this imagination that as I'm drawing them, they're influenced by gravity, pressures, and tensions as they're transmitting fluids and gases. I also use the drawings as a beginning place to start some larger works as well, and actually take the forms and project them and cut them out to kind of create larger wall installations. And I have to say, though, that these original drawings are kind of one of my favorite things because it has that energy and represents, visually the creative moment. So thanks. I love the theme for the exhibition.
thank you. We loved your work. The sense of that initial spark, that coup, that thunderbolt is very important for scribbling, I think. And you show this fluidity beautifully. Thank you. Next, we have Sydney Cash. Hi, Sydney. Please unmute yourself. I'm hoping everyone is here because we didn't check the list. Are you here, Sydney? Unmute.
I'll let you know in a minute if the person is here.
No. No.
No. So we'll move on.
Okay, thank you.
May I say
Yeah.
something about Sydney's? This is Amy Cheng.
Yes.
I know that the way that he made this drawing was that he put what is it? What's that shiny like floor paint?
Enamel? House
Enamel, thank you. Enamel into a paper bag that he poked a hole into. And he just basically squeezed it over this aluminum plate that he painted black. And he held a piece of cardboard in his left hand. And whenever he wanted a line to stop, he would just, interrupt it with his little piece of cardboard and then restart it somewhere else.
Well, the technique and these techniques were wonderful. They were all inventive. So we love that spontaneity that he shows.
Yes, and then let me just point out one more thing. He used a marker then and refined it by adding this black edge to certain portions of this line. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. That's great. And now we have Amy Moss. Hi, Amy. Please
Now,
unmute.
Wendy was.
Wendy. All right. Thank you.
Lois knows me very well. Thanks, Lois.
Wendy.
So I've told Amy and Lois many times that this
Someone
is.
is
Wendy, you have
Yes.
feedback. Do you have two devices on? You're echoing.
I don't, but I hear the echo.
Hmm,
No.
okay. All
How
right.
do we get rid of that? I can't stand hearing myself twice.
I don't know.
Okay. Mute. I'm just gonna mute and
You
do it.
did- Okay, good. And then speak slowly also.
Is that better?
Try
No.
again.
Yes.
Crazy. Okay. So talk
No.
slow. So, I thanked Amy and Lois for this show because not only is it great art with unusual techniques, but it was a lot of fun. It's just the work is good, but it was fun. Okay. I don't know why this is doing this.
I
Anyway.
feel like it's a scribble. It's a sound.
Okay, here's a scribble. Okay, so this scribble came from a sketchbook, as you can see from the top. I am not usually a scribbler, nor do I draw. I'm a collage mixed media artist and a printmaker, and I like mixing these two techniques together. This particular scribble comes from magazine parts, old monoprints that I felt, weren't good enough to call art. And I like mixing these materials together. So this scribble came from a sketchbook during COVID. And it was a time where I was kind of paralyzed and not thinking about doing art because I had a son who was very sick with long haul COVID. We didn't know what it was at the time. But I finally felt ready to do something, but was overwhelmed, had no idea where to start. So I took this 12 by 9 pad and I divided it into, oh, that's better. I divided it into 6 rectangles. And my intention was, I figured one rectangle a day I could manage. Well, inevitably, I ended up doing the whole page every time, but it was just a great way to start. I ended up filling 2 notebooks, and I would say in this case, the scribble kind of saved me during COVID.
Thank you. That's a great story. Thank you, Wendy. I really appreciate that. And you had a lot of invention with all that repetition of changing variety and the same kind of approach in a journal. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next artist is Sharon Strauss with Flower Power. Thank you, Sharon. Please unmute yourself.
Is she there?
Can you check, please, Joyce?
I am checking right now.
This is Amy. It doesn't sound like Sharon is there. I have to tell you that I myself was confused about how to get onto this Zoom because there was that registration. So I registered and then I expected to receive a Zoom link, but then it, turned out that the registration and the Zoom link were the same. So I think that maybe some people are having problems getting, just because that was confusing, but
Amy, yeah, it may have gone into your spam folder, but I think most of the people are fine. If you know her email, you can feel free to email her now and she can share later if she comes on. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go on the next. And now we have Rena Diana. Hi, Rihanna. I'm sorry. Hi, Rena. Can you please?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Good. Hi, yes, it's Rena. And I want to thank you also, Lois and Amy, for this opportunity, and the Carter Burton Gallery for an absolutely beautiful exhibit. So everything every artist previously has said on this Zoom certainly resonates with me. This is the story of a really repurposed piece.
We lost you. Are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So this began as a collage, and it sat around for a couple years, and I happened to look at it and feel like it looked pretty flat and dead. So I decided just to play with it, which is certainly the essence of scribbling. And I began painting over what were these organic shapes underneath that had been collaged on, and adding line work. And I'm interested in how the scribbles become more intentional, which is what happened in this case. And I had transparent layers added up, and then adding more and more lines. And for those of you who know my work, I generally actually do glacially carved coasts and work a lot with rocks. But as I kept going on this, going in and in, thinking about just the deepest forms and textures of the natural world at a micro level, when I was finished and I looked at it, this is like not knowing the point of your story until you're finished. Clearly, it became these sort of winged floral shape that emerged as I was scribbling.
Thank you. It's a great example of finding out what you're doing at the end or as it evolves. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rena. Okay. All right, we have Eileen Hoffman next. Hi, Eileen. Are you?
Hi, I'm here. I'm here. Hi, Lois. So I got involved with textiles as a teenager, and I've drawn more of my inspiration from the traditions of textiles than from Western art. So from that time, I began to feel and really experience that each knitted or woven thread contained a story that was woven and put into the object that I was making or the maker was making. And I've incorporated that approach and that sensitivity and interpretation of touch into all of my work. And that's what I was examining in this series of rememberings. So each square, I think I would just start at the top and go over like writing. And each square was a free association and some combination of a doodle and a scribble. But when they are combined, they tell a story. And I want to thank Lois for including this piece, because you can see I made it many years ago, and it's really wonderful to look at it again and see how what I was exploring in my work then is still very current and vibrant in my work now and has developed considerably. So thank you.
Yeah, the feeling of spontaneity is fabulous. So thank you so much, Eileen. Okay, beautiful. And now we have Lawrence L. Gru. Thank you, Lawrence. Please unmute.
I wanted to thank Lois and Amy for putting this amazing show. I remember seeing the word scribble in the open call, and I had a double take because scribbles. And scribbles are really an intrinsic part of my work. Like without them, my work wouldn't even exist. And then more precisely, I would not have discovered my personal style. And to me, scribbles are the highest form of abstract art because it comes from this uninterrupted momentum where, at least for me, my ego is dormant when I start, and then I could truly become one with my piece and as I call it, the universe. And then at the end, it really tells me something about myself, and it's telling me my story when I'm going through at that particular moment. Like years later, I could look at a work and be like, oh yeah, I was going through that. And you know, in hindsight and time. And then I could see that I am somehow like this spiritual vessel that heals myself and then later on other people. And I want to thank Joyce for putting together this Zoom. It's wonderful to talk about Scribbles.
Yeah, I hope we keep talking about it. Today is not the end.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. And we're almost done. And we have Darcy Spitz. Please unmute Darcy. Hi.
Hi, thank you for including me in the show. This piece is called Whatever You Want It to Be, and that's what I hope people can interpret it according to themselves. I was vaguely thinking about pomegranates when I started this, but I really wasn't thinking about very much because I value freedom, like total freedom, and the place you get total freedom is on a blank page. So I just let myself let the nonverbal part of my mind wander however it wants to wander on a page. And I think of the other part of my mind as the chattering part. It's very verbal, but after a while it shuts off or it gets entertained by music or a podcast so that it totally frees this subconscious stream to come out. And I think this is a good parable for today because this is like almost like short attention span. Like each of these little things could be a thought that's vibrating. I also value the concept of implied movement. Nothing here is actually moving, but I think if you stare at it long enough, some of it will start to move. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Darcy. It's the textural quality comes out. I mean, all the pieces have wonderful elements. Thank you. And also, whatever it is, these two pieces, Gordon's and Darcy's, the titles were interesting. It invited audience participation in that it is what it is, or it is what you, the audience, want it to be. Okay, thank you, Gordon. Are you there? Please unmute. Is Gordon here? Please check.
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, well, just commending the feeling of overlapping of the lines and the sense of movement becomes these major and minor chords of color, line, and movement. So, all right, if he comes on later, we'll go back to it. Thank you. And Mary Hinch, can you please take
Okay, it's my turn. Well, hi. I realized I doodle when I'm happy. I mean, I scribble. Scribbling, doodling is very similar, right?
Yes.
But I scribble when I'm happy or when I'm sad or when I can't explain something or when I want to test a tool. I push it to its limit, and you could see the weave of paper when you just scribble on it with whatever tool that you have, a pencil or a magic marker or charcoal or ink. And that's interesting to have the weave of the paper come through. And I scribble when I don't understand something or I have no words. And I've scribbled on envelopes to my family just to entertain them as it goes through the mailing system. And I very high detailed scribbles with color, full color. And I scribble with welding. I've done several of this type of welding. And I wanted to see how intricate it can go without burning out any part of it. That was a challenge. And I scribbled doing when I'm on the telephone. I have actually a journal of telephone conversation scribbles. I mean, this journal is completely filled with just endless mind wanderings. And I would scribble when I was a secretary for over 30 years. And when I had to take minutes, very long meetings, I would scribble all along the edges. Then I would cut it off and keep it in an envelope. I have a whole huge envelope of little scribbles. But it's a great thing. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. This is great. The self-portrait aspect is fascinating. And the next speaker will talk about self-portraiture too. Randy, is Randy here? Randy?
Yes, I've just unmuted.
Thank you, Randy. Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you both so much. I wanted to speak about the effects of scribbling, of my hours of focusing online.
Hello.
And after hours of looking at my own, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we were unmuting someone. I don't know, so it was interference.
Sorry. What I find with scribbling is that the more I do it, the more I start to see it happening in the natural world. And I just sometimes have to stop and look for a camera because I want to photograph it. So I start to notice that these lines are happening everywhere. So for instance, I was recycling a wire spring-bound notebook, sort of ripping out the metal wire on it. And when I pulled the wire out, it was just this fantastic line. It was amazing. And it just fills me with excitement. So it's sort of, the artwork brings me to seeing art in life. And I got out of bed the other day, and just the way I got out of bed made the bed sheets go into a spiral. And I just stood there staring at this spiral. It was just fantastic. So I just start to see it in everything. Like I'll look at someone's hair and see like the light of the sun hitting it and lighting up a single hair as if it's a kind of wiry shape. And also one of my students, she started making scribble pictures, and I asked her to stop making so many scribbles, to start making fewer and start to actually look at the quality of the line, because she ganged on so much that it was hard to actually see the quality of it. And I'm finding it everywhere. There's a wonderful Bellini of St. Francis in the Frick. And if you look at the tendrils of the vines growing around St. Francis, I bet no one looks at it. They're just fantastic scribbles. If you like Steinberg, we'd love that. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Randy. And I know you mentioned pattern as a new idea in your scribbling. So
yes,
thank you so much. Okay. And our next speaker is Stephanie Mulvihill. Sorry, Miss Stephanie. Are you there? Please unmute.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm here.
Great.
Great, thank you. So this piece kind of represents a period of transition. It was part of a series that I made when it was during a period kind of my life where I was almost like learning to trust yourself again, learning to trust your intuition, which you know, not being so structured, not being so planned out, which is kind of the essence of what a scribble is. And so it was made beginning with a scribble. I felt like I needed to kind of step back and kind of go back to the basics, go back to the beginning where it was just about movement, just about that line. And this was made by starting with the ground and actually taking away. And so there was something about that process of removing the material rather than adding on, where it was about kind of delving deeper into yourself, kind of as like my arm was moving, as I was kind of laying down the initial marks, not really thinking about what was happening. It kind of let me discover some things about myself. And so it was almost like this meditative experience. And then, of course, you know, after the initial marks were laid down, I could go in and start picking out where things start intertwining and where these marks are going to be, you know, larger, where they disappear, where they become more pronounced. So it is really about this, almost like a deep delve into your cycles of habit, really, which is, it's about kind of coming full circle.
Thank you. I mean, the complexity is beautiful, and with the simplicity of the movement. So it's really nice. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And our last speaker will be Leah Reed. Leah, she submitted a sound version of Scribbles.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks.
My name is Leah Reed. I'm the composer of Sketch. I'd like to start by thanking Lois and Amy for including my work. So Sketch is a 5-minute fixed media music composition based on the creative process of drawing, writing, sketching, and composing. The title is a play on the children's game, Etch-a-Sketch. So in the piece, one hears the sounds of pencils, pens, markers, and metal objects on paper, cardboard, and wood. So the piece features the sounds of tearing paper, aluminum foil, sounds of scissors, crumpled paper, typewriters, printers, the sounds of specific letters, and even a poem being written, a stapler, among various other sounds. There is also quite a bit of scribbling involved. For those that can't listen to the piece in the gallery, the work is available on my website, leahreed.com, or on my SoundCloud page, and my handle is Leah Reed Music. The piece was also featured on NPR's Morning Edition last year, and if you'd like to hear some of the sounds pulled apart from the piece, I encourage you to check out the segment, which can be found by Googling my name, Leah Reed plus NPR. I believe the segment is called Composer Creates a Musical Piece with the Sounds of Drawing and Writing. I'm going to drop all the links I just mentioned in the chat so you can check them out. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Leah. And that was wonderful to see another discipline be inspired to scribble. Thank you. So this concludes people speaking about their work, but Amy and I are going to talk about the other works in the show. And just as a matter of what we drew from the works, we saw these themes and ideas. Just one or two here and there. Is scribbling subversive? It's humorous. There's sound metaphors and chats and chatters. Is Scribbles a search? We have scribble mark making to make figuration. We also have automatic lines and mark making. But for the sake of time, I'm not going to read everything. We're going to go right into a few more of the works of the artists. So let's begin. Here, this is a follow-up to Leah Reed's piece about sound. And here, Pauline Chernichow photographed a bathroom in the Lower East Side of New York. And when we saw this, we said, oh, this hits the humor button, because you have to be amazed at all this chatter. This is kind of a chat room in a bathroom. And I said to Leah, you know, I don't know if I would go in this bathroom, but I certainly would take time to read in this bathroom. But this was an amazing photograph. We also want to speak about the title and this artwork by Mary Hefili, Chatter. Chatter speaks to scribbles in noise and sound. And this multimedia piece, picking many different materials, mixed media, shows the different kinds of qualities, characteristics, or oral equivalents of scribbles in sound. And we have another artist named Christopher Skura, and Christopher submitted 2 sets of submissions. This was a blind jury, so we weren't going to know who was who. We had no idea. And so without knowing, we selected 2 pieces. We selected the 2-dimensional piece that looks like glyphs, even mark making symbology from Mexican cultures, it seems to me. And the sculpture that looks like glyphs on the right, he said that he's worked with Chamberlain, the sculptor. And so to begin the walkthrough through several artists, let's begin here. And Amy and I are going to talk about the work spontaneously. And in this piece, we picked the artists to show together for their interesting mark making and how there was a sense of progression and movement, and just the boldness of marks or the inventiveness of the variety of mark making. And we have another one where in this set of group of artworks, in the first piece on the left, that piece that's hanging from the part that looks like a head, that was actually the wire binding of a little notebook. Someone mentioned that they remarked how incredible the wire of notebooks seems like a great example of scribbling. Here, the fabric was used to create scribbles, and layers of tracing paper were used in the third piece over, and then of course collage in the last two. So these are brilliant examples of scribbles in different materials. Here there's a sense of calligraphy and diversity of line in the left and upper one, and also the unusual quality of the mesh metal in the lower one created this sense of line. The bulkiness of lines were created in an unusual way. And in the last one, you have ink marks applied with water in certain ones, so you create a sense of beautiful textures and lines. And this one, Amy, do you want to talk about this?
I actually really love the Raymond German on the right, because that really is a giant scribble in photographic form. And Samantha Jensen, the way that she basically put together these self-portraits, that gives it even though it's a photograph, it's a scribbly sense.
Yeah, that wavering of line, a sense of mixture of movement in the line. I know that David Hockney uses multiple photograph Polaroids in that sense of a moving. It's not, you can't pin it down. But this sense really in this photograph of her portraits of heads was, kind of like a scribble photographically. So we enjoyed that. In these pieces, we have the light movement on water of the white line on the black background in the upper left. It's photographically produced, but nature made the line. On the lower one, we have this dynamic, beautiful, expressive, bright cobalt blue line that just pops out very spontaneously and handmade, of course. And on the right side, we have the doodles in storytelling by Keisha Gay. Some of the artists spoke in person at our walkthrough last week. So we had a whole room of color, more oriented color work. And on the right, we have something that's a quintessential idea of the broken arm in a cast with scribbles on it. And we love the idea that the artists actually went out of their way to create a sculpture like this, because this was not a real cast surviving from childhood where you saw it off and put it back together. She generated the idea in a new piece, and that was something unexpected. So in a show like this, you get so much unexpected work that surprises you, and people really came through with that. And on this page, we have the variety of color work that was generated in these doodle scribbles. And they show so much energy and the sense of handling the elements of color, line, and shape. There's a lot of whimsy in here, and there's a lot of storytelling. And we wish we could talk about all of them individually, but they really show up as beautiful examples of the scribble. In this piece, we have a variety. We have the scribble on the upper left being used to fulfill a figurative artwork. So that energy and the intensity of line that's carried out so consistently creates a sense of unity of the whole page created out of those lines, creating shadows and light. And in other techniques, you have the variety of sculpture on the lower left too, which really have an inventive feel of using this variety of material. And you have in the sketch of the figure, a kind of a feeling that is inherited from the Steinberg feel of illustrating figures and showing the scribbles of actual sketching, like urban sketchers. So the density of line and the creative space making, the intuition, the textures, these are all fabulous and wonderful. And we had the sense of rhythm and repetition in the centerpiece, where the circles are kind of doodles in a wonderful sense of texture, variety, form, and movement. And the two sides, Betty is creating a relief, a wall relief out of marks on canvas that's shaped. So it's a wall relief, but it's exciting to follow the movement through the 3D dimensions. And on the right, we have the sense of calligraphy and writing, asemic writing, which is that overlap of the word, the written word, and the visual pictogram, picture feeling. And we're almost done. We have more beautiful mark making and gestures in these very loose scribbles. On the left is abstracted from nature. It's a photograph that's further abstracted. In the center is a great sense of just random free scribbling. And the right, we have figuration in both of those pieces that are scribbled. And I think finally we have our books in the center, which is this long, random, wonderful or planned version of mark making in the green pages of the book. You have a beautiful glasswork on the left with gorgeous textures. And you have books, you have a wire sculpture following a line, and you have this kind of compact scribble on the lower left in sculptural form, and a sense that reminds you of Klaus Oldenburg in the center on the bottom, which is his food-oriented work. And this is a very fun, humorous piece in a scribble. And lastly, we have these pieces that the left one feels very abstract, expressionistic. And the center is an artwork that's created of circles of photography that are all cut out of random photographs and then put together in a very humorous sense of an organically moved wall piece. It feels sculptural, but it's a flat piece on the wall. It's really interesting. A lot of the work follows that look. And on the right is a scribble made from an iPad. So that was really possibly the computer work, our new age. Of course, it's derived starting, but it's worked with a lot of intention as well in the last piece. And that is the story of scribbling. And it's a conversation that should be continued. I'd like to know if we have time for any questions, Joyce, if you want to have that continue for a few minutes.
Sure. Would you like me to show the video walkthrough first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good, Lois. You want to turn off your screen share?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and Lois and Amy, thank you so much. That's like museum quality curating, in my opinion. And I'm sure other people feel the same way. So let's go on a little quick walkthrough, and thank you to Mary Hentes, who took this video while she was sitting in the gallery. So hang on one moment. Have a lot of windows open. Okay. Hold on.
This is Amy Cheng. There were a lot of black and white pieces in the show, and I want to give Carter Burton the credit of combining those together in the first room and putting together the color pieces compressed in the second room. It was a very nice way of dividing the show visually.
Yeah, many thanks to Carter Burton. Today is Sarah Leone's anniversary, and she could not be with us today, but I hope she's here with us in spirit. And this is a nice, good, short video of the show. We had 500 people visit on the opening during the, we had, well, 70 artists. There'll be many people coming, but we were thrilled with the response. Thank you, Mary. This was great.
We're running over a little bit, so we have about 4 minutes for some questions. Does anyone have a question? You can put it in the chat, and then Amy and Lois can answer that question. Or if it pertains to my discussion, I'll answer that. I have a question. Lois and Amy, how did you two wind up collaborating and getting involved with the Carter Burton Gallery?
Well, I am part of a group called the New York Artist Circle, and many members are members of the Carter Burton Gallery. So I had been considering the scribble idea independently. I'd just thought about it a while, and I thought of doing it inside our group, the New York Artist Circle. But Amy and I talked, she was excited about it. She wanted to have it be a group show outside of just one organization. And so that led us to be, was the Carter Burton Gallery was interested because of Karen Bruckner and Beth Barry. So that was how the idea came to Carter Burton. I know many of the artists. It's a wonderful gallery, and they were happy and open to this idea for a group juried show, which was a fabulous universal idea to gather a nationwide assortment of artists.
Any other questions, anyone?
I'm just going to point out that Karen Bruckner asked what we thought the difference was between a scribble and a doodle. And this actually came up during the walkthrough that we had at the gallery. And someone said, well, that they thought a scribble is a more intentional, focused movement. And a doodle is maybe something that you do more mindlessly when somebody else is talking on the phone.
It could be, I forgot the linguistic origin of doodle, but it could be the semantics of just another fun word, and not, you know, it's not supposed to be dissected into rigid division of categories of one is this and one is the other. But I don't remember what someone told me where doodle comes from. I think that evening, opening night, somebody told me where it comes from. If you know, tell us.
We have a question from Ellen. I think she's maybe misunderstanding juried show. She said, who are the winners?
All of the artists selected were winners.
Yes. So tell us about actually, how many entries did you get all together?
360?
320.
320.
We picked 70, so it's about a quarter. It's under a quarter.
And how did you go about, the two of you? What was your process with that? Did you agree? Did you disagree? How did you go about that? That's a lot of artworks to go through.
We looked at it separately and made some initial judgments, yes, no, maybe. And then we went through it together a couple of times.
There were some similar great examples of the same feeling, like very loose scribbling. So, for example, and so to keep the variety to different mediums, and we're also mindful of geography. We wanted national representation, but if there was some couple of very good in the same example, we wanted to pick one of them. So we unfortunately couldn't include everyone. There were some great examples that we didn't include. But it was tough because, you know, we came to compromises. So it was great. I enjoyed working with Amy. We've had a good time. We loved working with the Carter Burton Gallery. We hope you'll come to the gallery in the last week, especially you, Joyce. But the show is all available online because they have a very good representation of all 70 artworks. But
and what's the website?
The name of the gallery. CarterBurtonGallery.com or Anyone?
Okay, maybe somebody can Google that while we're closing. I think that this was so illuminating. I had no idea that this exhibition would go so far as to include sound, and you presented architecture, Lois, you presented cartooning. There was so many facets of this that expanded my idea of what the idea of scribbling and automatic drawing can, or just art can be. So, and Amy, thank you, the two of you, thank you so much. Everyone is just, the accolades are coming in. And thank you, of course, to all the artists who shared and were so articulate about your work today. And this will be on YouTube. And after it is edited, everyone who participated in this program today will get a link, and you are welcome to cut and paste that link onto your social media or website or any other venue. Okay, so before we close, big thank you to everyone, especially Lois and Amy and Carter Burden Gallery.